Welcome again to your favorite channel on the YouTube, With Chats. With Chats is our channel where we often try to highlight topical issues. In previous episode, we've talked on issues ranging from politics, for instance, developmental issues, for instance, even in Africa, Europe, North America, even South America and Asia. Specifically, on the last episode, we highlighted a concerning issue regarding value of life, uh, pertaining to what we perceive as something not so desirable from Nigeria. I really want to encourage you to watch that episode and so that you can express your comments or your opinion as a comment in the comment section. So please encourage your friends to watch that episode. And don't forget to always encourage or invite your friends to be a follower of this YouTube channel with chat. In this particular episode, it's important we talk on something a bit different. We'll be talking on issues regarding the United States. In the last few months, spanning from the beginning of this current administration in the States, from January the 20th, this year, 2025, there have been a series of changes. I mean, the new government in the White House has approached the policy of the government from different, sort of a different perspective, especially from regarding immigration and trade. But that of immigration, I think we will talk about that. We'll find we should be able to talk about that in another episode. But in this particular episode, we will be talking on trade related changes in the United States. Because I mean, the current president of the United States, we often argue that he was elected based on the promises he made during the campaign. And one of the promises was about resetting the trade agreement of the United States with the rest of the world. And so the United States have taken a concrete step to do that. And the argument of the states, of the government, is that the United States is heavily indebted, has been treated so badly. According to Donald Trump, he will say that the United States have been treated so unfairly by most countries. And of course, that's the decision to reset this trade agreement with the rest of the world has received a lot of criticism. But there are also people who have argued for the United States or for the government of the United States. So for me, I think the issue regarding resetting the trade agreement between the United States and the rest of the world, which is simply saying that resetting the trade agreement globally. I think I will want to look at it from maybe two perspectives or to kind of pose a question from two different worlds. And the first part is that to actually ask if indeed the United States is indebted. Is it actually true that the United States is indebted? And if that is true, then the approach of the current government, is it really so? Do we suggest that the approach taken so far is the most effective way to address these issues? And so let's look at it from the first part, which is to say that, or which is to tend to answer the question of the indebtedness of the state. So is the United States really indebted? For me, there are so many ways to look at it and so many indicators to look at to be able to answer that question. But there are few. I was able to come up with, I think, four uh, indicators to show the states of indebtedness or indebtedness of the United States. The first part would be to look at the import and export of goods and services regarding the United States. So when we look at imports of goods and services to the state, compare that to value that of goods and services that is being exported out of the state, we will see that relatively the value of goods and services that is being imported into the state is far more higher than uh, the value of good that is being exported by the state. Normally, for a vibrant economy, for an economy that should have an overview of prosperity, such economy should export more of goods and services because the revenue or the receipt you get from export of goods and services makes a lot of difference into developing some of those critical needs or meeting some of those critical needs in the country. So for the case of the United States, as you see here, you will see that the percentage of earnings or the earnings as a percentage of the GDP, which is the gross domestic product, which is what measures the state of an economy. For imports, which is the blue um, trending line, you will see that to be way above that of export, which is not so desirable. So the desire of every robust economy is to have goods and services that is imported far more than that those that are imported. So another way to look at it is also we can look at it from the perspective of current account balance, which is tends to be the sum of the net exports. So some of the net export simply means that. So if you have aggregate of all the net export uh, in a positive trend, then that shows that exports, I mean, the current account or receipt from export is far more than that of import of goods and services. So in the case of the United States, again, you will see that even from the early 70s, the trend of current account balance has been in the negative. And as a matter of fact, it went so far down during the global financial crisis of 2000 and between 2007 and 2009. And it went further even after the pandemic, you will see from the far right, which is between 2021 and 2023. So, and that is the state of the current account balance, which is the sum of the net exports, which is also not desirable. And another way, or another thing to look at, could also be the debt of governments, the central government, the volume of debt of the federal government or the central government of the United States, because we have several states, over 52 states in the United States. So, but we are looking at the country itself, which is being represented as at the central. So looking at that, you will also see that the debt accumulated by the government at the central as a percentage of the GDP, that is how much of this debt compared to the gross domestic product. You also see even the data that we have here dated back to the early 90s, which was about 40% of the GDP, even as high as more than 120%, and currently is about also about 120% of the GDP, which is quite so high. And when I was looking at this data, this set of indicators, and I tried to also compare that with some of the countries, some of the Western countries, let's say some of the big economies in Europe, for instance, United States is far performing worse. And that is why you tends to understand why for people who have argued for the current government in the United States, that it is high time the United States cuts its debt deficit. And I think so when you look at it from the perspective of indebtedness, it's largely true that the United States is really so indebted. And the last indicator to look at is even how much interest is being paid to the debt that is being accumulated by the central government in the United States. So we will also see that as a percentage of revenue, that is how much interest, how much payment is being made towards the government's debt. So compare that with the revenue that is being earned. So you will see that even as it stands now, close to more than 10% or close to about 13, 14% of government earning of revenue is being used to service its debt, which is also not so palatable. One very interesting thing which I noticed regarding the state of indebtedness of the United States is that, of course, some of these indicators shows as far back as early 70s or even late 60s. But it became so concerning since the early 80s. For instance, when we go back again and see from the early 80s, from the first one, we'll see from the early 80s, the trend of uh, imports of goods and services relative to export of goods and services taking a lead start from the early 90s, sorry, early 80s. And since that early 80s, the gap has since been so concerning. And also, of course, in this case of current account balance, dated from the early 70s, it has somewhere between zero and negative. But since early 80s, it went downward slope, which also suggests that something happened or something could actually be associated to such a dramatic turnaround in the as dated to 1980s in the United States. So largely speaking, is the current government of the United States really so, if you want to answer the question by saying that is the current United States government really so, are they on the right track, or really is it true that the government is really so indebted? I think yes. When we look at what the data says, I think yes. So, but what uh, people might really want to contend with might just be the other part of the question, which is the approach at which the current government is really taking the issue of rescaling its own debt. Of course, there have been a lot of argument, but recently I read uh, a write-up from a group of economists, and some of them actually argued against the effect of such approach, which is sort of destabilizing the global trade system. But some have actually said that there is no better way out of it. For those who have argued for the current government in the United States, those have actually argued that there is no better way to solve this problem. The most important thing is to get the problem solved. But one of the things I find so curious or kind of to this discussion is that a lot of the Western governments who seems to be either kind of criticizing the government steps in the United States, uh, are kind of their own position, I mean, those governments' position regarding indebtedness are far way better. So, I mean, some of those governments are not as indebted as the United States. So, if we look at it from the perspective of the state itself, or as a political elite, or as a political leader of the United States who has been voted, to defend the country. I mean, to look after the good and the benefit of the country. Taking such step might not really be a bad thing to do. Uh, I mean, irrespective of what we might want to call it. Donald Trump will say American first. Either will say American first or being nationalistic. The most important thing is that to seek for the growth or the betterment of its country, and which is the current government is doing. So, in order to address the issue of trade deficits, or to rescale uh, trade agreement between United States and the other part of the world. Some of these indicators that we have mentioned will actually need to be addressed. And as a matter of fact, the United States might do better to look at what actually happened dated back to the early 80s, which seems to have marked such a dramatic negative downturn in the trade imbalance and subsequently the debt indebtedness of the country. Uh, for so many of other countries around, I guess in the recent time, just few days ago, the United States just signed an agreement with Chinese government regarding trade agreements. United States has been successful in doing so with so many of the countries, like the United Kingdom, for instance, with India and so many other countries as well. And I think some of these countries have come to realize the fact that uh, if we want to use the word of Donald Trump, that the United States might not have been treated fairly in terms of trade globally. And so addressing it right this particular moment might not be a bad thing to do. And as well, in as much as this current government will always want to, blame the previous government, why the previous government hasn't taken such unnecessary step. So, I mean, taking this step at this moment is so crucial because there is no better time to it. So, I don't know about your opinion regarding either the approach of the United States to rescaling or to readdress the trade imbalance between the United States and the rest of the world, or the question of states indebtedness. You can also let us know about the state of your own country, the indebtedness of your country, and how your country has been able, or your country is trying to solve such problem. And I think it's good that we uh, uh, make our opinion known. Your opinion might be different from what the current United States government is doing regarding addressing its indebtedness. Please express your opinions in the comments. And also, please don't forget, this is WeChat. Don't forget to always invite your friends and ask them to subscribe to this channel. Subsequently, we'll talk on some other interesting topic. Maybe it could be immigration issue in the United States. But before then, please stay tuned and continue to watch this channel with chat. Bye.